Imagine an America where you're forced to choose between filling your gas tank or buying groceries for the week. A country where delivery trucks face constant risks due to fuel shortages and wildly fluctuating prices, changing by the hour. As major oil pipelines shut down, exports are restricted, and oil wells are abandoned for no longer being profitable, the country is being squeezed from the inside out. When oil stops flowing, everything crumbles: food, transportation, electricity. And surprisingly, it's the once powerful names that fall first. Let's examine how 10 U.S. states are being devastated by this unfolding oil crisis. Watch until the end for a global perspective. 1. Texas. Texas has long been synonymous with oil wealth, black gold, with billions pouring from the Permian Basin to Houston. But today, a deep silence has fallen. As global oil supplies dwindle, international trade agreements shift, and federal quotas clamp down on exports to shield domestic consumption, Texas finds itself under severe pressure. Multi-million-dollar oil wells lie abandoned. Refinery operations are frozen. Oil tankers are stuck. But the damage goes beyond numbers. Over 60,000 energy workers lost their jobs in just the first quarter of the year. Cities like Midland, Odessa, and Corpus Christi are witnessing an exodus not seen since the Great Depression. The problem is bigger than Texas alone. The state isn't just an oil producer. It manages a vast ecosystem that includes petrochemicals, transport, storage, and global oil exports. When Texas suffers, the entire American economy feels it. Damage to this energy heartland weakens the entire national body. 2. North Dakota. Once celebrated as the poster child of America's shale revolution, North Dakota used to produce over 1 million barrels a day from the Bakken Shale alone. But that dream is unraveling, one well at a time. As oil prices drop and production costs soar, hundreds of wells are closing permanently. Businesses have gone bankrupt. Equipment is abandoned. Once thriving oil towns like Williston and Dickinson now resemble ghost towns. Homes stand vacant, shops are shuttered, and "for sale" signs dominate Main Street. Over half of the state's budget depends on oil and gas revenue, placing it deep into deficit. Cuts to healthcare, education, and social welfare are sweeping through the state. North Dakota, once a beacon of American energy, is now a cautionary tale about the risks of depending on a volatile resource. 3. Louisiana. Louisiana, once known as the barrel of America's energy gun, is slipping into stillness. Along the Mississippi River, massive oil refineries now stand motionless because there's no crude oil left to process. Oil tankers have stopped arriving. Storage tanks are empty. The export system at the Port of New Orleans is paralyzed. This supply chain breakdown has shut down not just refining operations but also logistics and technical services connected to it: rail transport, distribution, and equipment maintenance. Cities like New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lake Charles, once vibrant with energy-related commerce, are now hotspots of joblessness and financial crisis. Thousands have been laid off with no pay. The once busy seaports are eerily quiet. For Louisiana, oil is more than an industry, it's a lifeline. And when that lifeline is severed, the entire state begins to wither. 4. Alaska. Alaska, a wild and resource-rich frontier, was once hailed as America's oil treasure. But today, its most abundant resource is uncertainty. The state's primary revenue source, oil and gas, is disappearing rapidly. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline, which once moved over 2 million barrels a day, now operates at less than 25% capacity. With reduced flow, maintenance becomes more expensive and a full shutdown looms on the horizon. This decline means reduced public services, cut pensions, halted infrastructure projects, and slashed social programs. Benefits like oil dividends and winter energy relief are under threat. Fuel costs are skyrocketing. In remote villages, residents pay up to 5 times the national average just for heating. As Alaska braces for its harsh Arctic winter, every gallon of oil becomes a matter of survival. Though rich in resources, the state is now battling a brutal environment and an even harsher energy crisis. 5. Oklahoma. Once the poster child of America's shale revolution, Oklahoma transformed from a quiet agricultural region into a booming energy hub. Cities like Tulsa and Oklahoma City soared with the influx of oil companies, jobs, and capital. But that golden era vanished overnight. A drop in oil prices, rising interest rates, and a mass exodus of investment triggered a wave of bankruptcies. In just 6 months, over 12,000 oil and gas workers lost their jobs in Tulsa and Oklahoma City alone. Office buildings are vacant. Real estate markets are frozen. The state's budget, once buttressed by oil tax revenue, is now riddled with deficits. For the first time in decades, residents are packing up and leaving to survive. 6. Wyoming quiet and rarely in the spotlight. Wyoming has been devastated in a slow and silent collapse. With nearly 60% of its budget tied to energy, oil, gas, and minerals, the state simply couldn't withstand the shock of plummeting prices. Companies fled. Wells were shut down. The financial system buckled. Home values crashed. Schools are underfunded, and rural hospitals have closed. Towns like Casper and Gillette, once reliant on energy, are being slowly erased from the map. There's no media coverage or federal rescue. Just a vast, empty land quietly bleeding, one day at a time. Wyoming isn't exploding, it's extinguishing, like a dying flame in an abandoned oil well. 7. California might not be a top oil producer, but it's the country's biggest energy consumer. From Silicon Valley to Central Valley, the economy depends on fuel. But when gas prices soared past $9 per gallon, the economic engine began to fail. The trucking industry was hit first. Many companies avoided California routes altogether. Farming operations in Central Valley shut down, unable to absorb fuel costs. Delivery services slashed routes, raised prices, and delayed shipping. People in suburbs gave up cars and jobs, unable to afford commutes. The cost of living skyrocketed. California, global innovation hub, found itself paralyzed by something as basic as gas. 8. Pennsylvania as the industrial heart of the Northeast. Pennsylvania has always relied on cheap energy to power its manufacturing base. Steel, chemicals, cement, and plastics all depend heavily on oil and gas. But with supply chains breaking down and fuel costs soaring, industries are shutting down. Steel mills in Pittsburgh have halted operations. Thousands of workers have been furloughed. Chemical plants along the Delaware River are operating at under 30% capacity. From Philadelphia's ports to the region's industrial railways, every link is breaking under the strain. Once a proud symbol of America's industrial prowess, Pennsylvania now faces the threat of prolonged collapse. 9. Colorado emerged as a rising star in the fracking world. East of Denver, shale production exploded, bringing jobs and billions in investment. But environmental regulations and permit delays slowed everything down. Oil prices collapsed, and companies began to fold. Over 8,000 fracking jobs have disappeared. Towns like Greeley and Rifle are watching families leave, schools shrink, and businesses close their doors. Colorado still has potential, but right now, it's being strangled by economic forces and policy restrictions. 10. New Mexico without a Wall Street or Silicon Valley. New Mexico has relied on one thing to survive: oil. Nearly half of its state budget depends on taxes from oil and gas production in the Permian Basin. But now, that financial engine has failed. Revenues have plummeted. Schools are closing. Healthcare programs are being cut. Poor and indigenous communities are hit hardest, losing both oil jobs and vital public services. Towns like Los Alamos, Hobbs, and Roswell are falling into chaos. Families are being forced to choose between buying medicine or paying utility bills. New Mexico staked its future on oil, and now that the wells are drying up, the dream of fiscal stability is becoming a nightmare. The earthquake of the 21st century. This oil collapse is not just about high gas prices. It signals a seismic shift in the global economy. The states most reliant on oil are now the most vulnerable. From powerful Texas to forgotten Wyoming, the lesson is clear. Lack of diversification, poor planning, and resistance to change have left much of America dangerously exposed. In a world where energy is becoming a geopolitical weapon, countries like China and Canada are reconfiguring supply lines. The US can no longer assume energy will always be accessible. Because when an oil well runs dry, it can be replaced. But once trust in the system is lost, the fallout is far greater, costing livelihoods, stability, and futures. The real question isn't how much gas we have left. The question is, will your state survive? Or will it be next? Will America wake up in time, or be dragged back by its own outdated energy dependence? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to